Hello everyone, this is test 6, I think, section 2. Let's go. Also, I'm Rex. Hi. In the winter of 1968, scientists David Schindler and Greg Brunskill poured nitrates and phosphates into Lake 227. This is one of the... Oh, God, that was disgusting. Okay, so that was a comma splice, two independent clauses, it's D, I think. Area Schindler and Brunskills were contaminating the water not out of malice, but in the name of research. While deliberately adding chemical compounds to a lake may seem destructive and irresponsible, this, I think it's A, that didn't seem to have any issues with it. The pause technique coming to the rescue there. Schindler and Brunskill were investigating possible causes for the large blooms of blue algae or cyanobacteria that's been affecting bodies of water such as Lake Erie. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algal blooms cause oxygen depletion. Oxygen depletion kills fish and other wildlife in the lakes. Optimization, let's see. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algal blooms cause oxygen depletion, the result being ill. So this added another being. There was already one in this sentence earlier. That was the in addition to being, but adding a second one is a no-no. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algal blooms cause oxygen depletion. The semicolon's always wrong. C. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algal blooms cause oxygen depletion and oxygen. This comma fanboys is usually a no-no. This doesn't really combine the two sentences, so I think no. D. In addition to being unsightly and odorous, these algal blooms cause oxygen depletion, which kills fish. D. Number 4. Just weeks after the scientists added the nitrates and phosphates, the water in Lake 227 turned bright green. It was thick with. Sounds horrible. Okay, so it's not A because you're supposed to pause with every punctuation mark, and I don't want to say it was thick with. We want to say it was thick with the same type of green. Okay, so then this is going to be like B or D, and then it can't be D because that would be another comma splice independent before and after. A comma is bad, and so it's B because colon means let me tell you why. Or let me tell you what. The water turned bright green. Let me tell you why. It was thick with the same algae. There we go. Which choice has best transition from the previous paragraph to this? You got to read this paragraph too. The scientists divided the lake in half by placing a nylon barrier through the narrowest part of its figure 8 shape. In one half of Lake 226, they added phosphates, nitrates, and a source of carbon. In the other, they added just nitrates and a source of... That's redundancy. They added just nitrates and a source of carbon. B. Schindler and Brunskills hypothesized that phosphates were responsible for the growth of cyanobacteria. The experiment confirmed their suspicions when half of the lake containing the phosphates was teeming, because the subject is half. This is classic subject-verb agreement pattern. We have subject and a lot of weird stuff that's useless in the middle, and then the verb. So half is the subject. Half in this case is singular, given that it's modifying lake, because the quantities depend on their prepositional clauses for number. So half is the equivalent of he, she, or it. It was third person singular. It was teeming. So it would be like A or D, but I don't think that we want present tense here, because the other sentences in this paragraph were past tense, like they added, hypothesized, like that, were responsible. Okay, is at the end of this guy? Okay, now I can do 5. Always want to make sure that questions with directions we're reading the paragraph it's in, which is why I did it weirdly out of order. One mission of the experimental lakes area is to conduct research that helps people better understand the threats to the environment. I don't know about other people understanding threats to the environment. Experimental lakes is located in a sparsely inhabited region that experiences few effects of human and industrial activity. But they did stuff to it. This would clash with its own paragraph. To isolate the cause of the algae, Schindler and Brunskill performed another experiment, this time causing Lake 226. This time using Lake 226. I think it's C, because like it does the transition part, so it follows the directions, because it was just talking about how the lake was thick with green-blue algae or whatever. And then this one's talking about Lake 226, so it both matches its own paragraph and follows the directions, which is the golden duo. The process by which water becomes enriched by dissolved nutrients. Oh God. Eutrophication is random as heck. Get out of here. C. 6 is good, 7 is good. Onwards. Schindler and Brunskill's findings were shown off by the journals published in maybe C. The research demonstrated a clear correlation between introducing phosphates and the growth of blue-green algae. Legislators in Canada passed laws banning phosphates in laundry detergents. Wouldn't it be like subsequently? So they found a connection, and that's why Canada said you can't use it. So D. At this point, the writer wants to add a second policy outcome of the research described, which best accomplishes this goal. So something that results in not using as much phosphate stuff. Lake 226 continued. I don't think that's a policy option. In the United States, many individual states have adopted legislation to eliminate or at least reduce phosphorus content. Maybe in 1974, Schindler initiated a study of the effects of acid. Random aerial photographs of lake taken before and after algal blooms help convey the effects of phosphates in the random aerial photograph. What? Okay, so then this is B. Which choice most effectively anticipates and addresses a relevant counter-argument to the argument in favor? Oh my God, what the? Okay, I'm just gonna use this is where the paragraph relevance rule is so helpful, because whatever you pick, make sure it fits in its own paragraph too. So then, given that those directions were quite hideous, let's just see if we can find some clues from context. I've got to read the whole paragraph. Experiments like these can help people understand the unintended consequences of using certain household products. Blank. Selectively establishing remote study locations such as the experimental lakes area can provide scientists with opportunities to safely conduct controlled research. There are split infinitives all over this test. This research can generate evidence solid enough to persuade policymakers to take action in favor of protecting the larger environment. Okay. Of course, regulating the use of certain chemical compounds can be a controversial issue. Okay, that's not supported by its own paragraph, so I can't see it possibly like fitting in here, I think. Many companies now offer phosphate-free alternatives for health. Also not supported, I think, by its paragraph, because they're talking about how like the lake area can be a good place to do research. Obviously, scientists should not be allowed to randomly perform experiments on just any body of water. Maybe, because that might match with how they say that's why we want to do it this experimental lake. Phosphates are sometimes used in agriculture. Random. Okay, I think it's C. Let me just make sure that it's following the directions, but anticipates and addresses a relevant counterargument to the argument in favor. So if it's argument in favor, a counterargument that would be negative. And if you're going to anticipate and address that, then you want to say something kind of like good about that. So I think it is C then, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, obviously we're not just going to do like we're not going to be careless like that, so it's kind of good. Weird question. Italy's Tower of Pisa has been leaning southward since the initial stages of its construction. Its possessive is like D, constructed over the 800 years ago. Blank. If the tower's construction had not taken 2 centuries and involved significant breaks due to war and civil unrest, which allowed the ground beneath the tower to settle, the tower would likely have collapsed before it was completed. Okay, so C and D are identical, so I don't think that they can possibly be right. You can't have 2 right answers. B is interesting to me. I think A works, and usually when you're in that situation where the causal transition might work, and then the et cetera, or like the whatever else transition works, I would favor like the weaker one, because therefore can be kind of strong. So let's see if we can disprove therefore. It's been leaning southward, and therefore, if it hadn't taken 2 centuries, it would have fallen down. Wait, isn't that like isn't that like not logical? Wouldn't it have fallen down if it took less than 2 centuries? I think therefore it introduces a weird logical I don't know, mistake. I'm gonna go with A, I think. Luckily, the tower survived, and its tilt made it an Italian icon. Comma splice made an Italian icon, attracting. B. Visitors from all over who flock to see Pisa as one of the greatest architectural weirdnesses of the world. It's oddities, right? Like that's the only one that means that it's kind of strange, but not in a bad way. Deviation is totally negative. Abnormality is negative. Weirdness is totally negative and casual. By the late 20th century, the angle of the tower still had reached an astonishing 5.5 degrees. In 1990, Italy's government closed the tower. Where does this go? Oh, I thought question 16 went there. It's important to know what question you're on. Let me just check with, I'm going to do 17 first because 16 requires me to read the whole paragraph anyway. The angle had reached an astonishing 5.5 degrees in 1990. At 5.5 degrees, semicolon. In 1990, Italy's government closed the towers to visitors and appointed the committee. That might be right the way it was, but let's see. Italy's government closed is wrong. 1990, Italy, no. Putting a colon after a semicolon is pretty crazy. I'm going to go with A. But so 16... unfortunately, the tower still has steadily increased over the century, placing the structure in danger of collapse by the late... Oh, this might work. It's relevant to its paragraph. It's not super random, so I think it might be a yes. Provides an important I don't think it's a restatement, so lie. Because it establishes an important shift in the emphasis in the paragraph discussion. Possible, because it was kind of positive. It was very positive before when it was saying that people flock from all over the world to come see it. I'm going to read the no answers just to make sure that just to make sure they're also lying. So, because it interrupts the paragraphs, irrelevant. Yeah, it's not irrelevant because it repeats information that's already been presented in the first paragraph. Well, we can check, but I don't think that that's right. Yeah. If it not had taken... they just said that over the course of 200 years or whatever, it's been like steadily increasing. But then I could say that the tower is still steadily increasing over the centuries by placing the structure of collapse. Even if you wanted to say that that is like a true statement for answer choice 16D, I think that you would be wrong to say that this doesn't belong in this paragraph. So the no portion of this answer choice tells me that this is B, I think. 18. The committee was charged with saving the tower without ruining its aesthetic. Blank. The committee's first attempt to reduce the angle of the tower's tilt, placing 600 tons of iron ingots, molded pieces of metal on the tower's north side to create a counterweight, was derided because the bulky weights ruined the tower's appearance. The attempt at a less visible solution, sinking anchors into the ground below the tower, almost caused the tower to fall. Main point of the paragraph, which no one had managed to achieve. I don't know. Although not everyone on the committee agreed completely with what that aesthetic. Okay, that's random. I think agreeing what the aesthetic is, which meant somehow preserving the tower's tilt while preventing the tilt from increasing and toppling the tower. Maybe. Which included the pristine white marble. That's random. I think it's A or C, and then I'm gonna go with. I think I'm leaning towards C because I don't think the passage was talking about how, or the paragraph here is talking about how no one had managed to achieve that yet. So then I think that this is like. This would count as irrelevant to its own paragraph, right? Whereas C contains concepts that they talk about in the following sentences. So I'm going to go with C. 19. Enter committee member John Burland. He is. Okay, this is a full comma splice again because enter is an imperative, which means that it has a implied subject of you. So you enter is a full sentence, and then he is also a full sentence, so we can't make a comma splice. Don't pick C because being's always wrong. It's likely D. Enter commission member John Burland, a geotechnical engineer from England who saved London's clock tower. Yeah, it's D. Burland began a years-long process drilling out small amounts of soil from under the tower. That took several. Oh my God, redundant because they just said it's years long. So D. Twice daily, Burland evaluated these movements and made recommendations as to how much soil should be removed in the next drilling. By 2001, almost 77 tons of soil had been removed and the tower's tilt had decreased by over 1.5 degrees. The ugly iron weights were removed and the tower was reopened to visitors. Burland advocated using soil extraction. It sounded fine. You don't use a helping infinitive after advocate. You don't say like advocated to do. You just say like he advocated doing something. Advocated the using of, advocated to use? Yeah, I think it's A. Advocated using soil extraction, removing small signs, and blah, 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 blah. Sentence 5 should be placed. Berlin advocated using soil extraction. Well, let's see. I'm willing to bet it's not delete. If it's like a paragraph or directions question, then delete is usually the trap cop-out answer that they want you to pick because they don't want you to spend too much time on it. So, or they want you to feel bad for spending so much time on it, and so they're going to be like, oh, shortcut, it's D, but probably not. So his method, he advocated using soil extraction. Let's see where that would go. Enter community John, blah, blah, blah. He began a years-long process. Okay, I think it's before sentence 2 because he's already digging by then. And sentence 5, it says he's advocating digging after 1A. Tower tip, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I don't even have to read the last paragraph. Nice. The term paramedics refers to healthcare workers who provide... best introduction to the para. So blank. While the pressures of an aging population, insurance reforms, and health epidemics have increased demand for care, the supply of physicians is not expected to keep pace. I think it's 24A. The Association of American Medical Colleges predicts a shortage of over 90,000 physicians by 2020. By 2025, that number could climb to more than 130,000. In some parts of the country, shortages are already a sad fact of life. Sad. A 2009 report that the Bureau of Health Professions notes that although a fifth of the U.S. population lives in rural areas, less than a tenth of U.S. physicians serves that population. Dang. Because the traditionalist response to the crisis, amping up medical college enrollments, and it's not amping, they're not like volume. It's bolstering, like supporting, reinforcing. Is too slow and costly to address the near-term problem. Alternatives are being explored. One promising avenue has been greater reliance on physician assistance. Okay, main idea for the term paramedics is random. For many Americans, finding a physician is likely to become a growing challenge. Maybe they were talking about a physician shortage. Getting treatment for an illness usually requires seeing general practitioner and specialist, unmentioned, so random. Worldwide, the costs are increasing at a line. The worldwide part is wrong. Isn't this all about the U.S.? So B. 24 is good, 25 is good, 26. Several factors argue in favor of such an expanded role. By virtue of their medical training PAs, it's referring to PAs, third person plural, so we need to say their, but we have to say the correct there. So the answer is C. His or her is singular. PAs can perform many of the jobs traditionally done by doctors, including treating chronic and acute conditions, performing minor surgeries, and prescribing some medications. We need comma before the and. This was a serial comma construction, A, comma, B, comma, and C. So I think the answer is D. However, although well compensated, earning in 2012 a median salary of $90,000 PA. This is a parentheses, I think. Although well compensated, I think I need a parentheses around earning all the way to 90,000 something. Although they're well compensated, earning blah, 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 blah. I think it might be B. C doesn't close the parentheses, so there's no comma, second comma after 90,000. Compensated, okay, so colon is like a period, so then that would be very strange for us to cut that sentence right there. I think it is B. P has got, okay, good. Is that the end of this pair? Nope. Cost healthcare less than do the physicians who might otherwise undertake these tasks. Nice illogical comparison there. Yeah. Moreover, the training period for PAs is markedly shorter than... Oh, illogical comparison, speaking of which. Moreover, the training period for PAs is markedly shorter than something of the physicians. If we're comparing training period for PAs with something else, we have to make sure that something else is also like training period for PA, or training period, like third person singular. So we want B or C because the that would refer to training period, making it third person singular. A would be wrong because those is plural, and then D would be wrong because you're comparing a training period with physicians. And last time I checked, training periods are not physicians. Okay, so then I think that between B and C, it's C because C is more refined, like shorter. Okay, I skipped 26 because it was a main idea question. I had to read the whole thing. I think that it was. I think that it's probably appropriate to insert it, given that it gave kind of like a nice, like umbrella for the entire paragraph. It introduces a counter argument for balance. It's not a counter argument. They're in favor. It's a lie. Yes, because it frames the points. The paragraph. Okay, that's nice. No, because it does not specify the education required. If you have an issue, the issue is not to make it long. If you have an issue, the remedy is not to make it longer. So like when they give a reason like that, where they're like, oh, it doesn't say this thing, and I'm like, wait, so you're saying I can say the random thing too, as long as I say the other thing? It's kind of weird. Because it presents it's only tangential to the main art. No, it's like a good structural sentence. It introduces the main idea of the paragraph. So this one's B. 31. Physicians offer primary. I'm just going to transition, so let's see if we can just do it with the sentence before and after. A recent review of the scholarly literature by Texas researchers found that PAs lend cost-efficient, widely appreciated services in underserved areas. Rural-based PAs often provide a broader spectrum of such services than do their urban and suburban counterparts, possibly as a consequence of the limited pool of rural-based physicians. Again, I think the causal transition there is a little suspect. I don't think that it's despite this, because they were all, those two sentences were positive, and I don't think it's on the other hand, because that would also be a contrast, meaning that one of them should be negative. So I think it's A or B, and again, I kind of feel like the causal here is a little bit weird. A recent review of scholarly literature found something, and that's the reason why rural-based PAs provide a broader section of service. Doesn't make any sense, and that's the reason why is what thus means, so I'm going to go with in addition A. Okay, so 32. It's got directions. Let's read everything. Read the whole paragraph. Increasingly, PAs and other such medical practitioners have become a critical complement to physicians. In 2013, Rand Corporation reports... A 2013 Rand Corporation report estimates that while the number of primary care physicians will increase slowly from 2010 to 2025, the number of physicians, assistants, and nurse practitioners in primary care will grow at much faster rates. Cool. In fact, according to the data presented in the table, physicians' assistants will likely outnumber physicians by 2025. Is this true? Physicians' assistants? 2025? Number? No? Okay, isn't that a lie? Because the physicians are 216,000 and physicians are 242,000. What are you talking about? It's not, it's C for 32. Both by merit and from necessity, PAs are likely to greet more patients. I don't think they're greeting like understanding, like patients. It's patients like the people who go to the hospital. So more patients than, so D. More patients than ever before. Nice. Last one, starting with an optimization. Nice. Popular film franchises are often rebooted in an effort to make their characters and stories fresh and relevant for new audiences. Superhero comics are periodically reworked to try to increase their appeal to contemporary readers. Okay, so optimization. Let's make sure we combine them. So no semicolon stuff. I'm not sure if I see any here. And then let's make sure that we're being respectful. So not changing the originals too much. They just want us to combine it, not edit it. In an effort to make their characters and stories fresh and relevant for new audiences, popular film franchises, which are often rebooted, are similar to... did it say similar to in the original? Why are they adding words? Whoever wrote this original is going to be very, very sad. Which are... Okay, so A, I'm a little suspicious of. Just as popular film franchises are often rebooted in an effort to make their characters and stories fresh and relevant for new audiences, superhero comic books are periodically reworked to try to increase their appeal to contemporary readers. That seemed to have preserved the original sentences pretty well. I know it added, like, just as, but I can see why they would add that in if you're trying to combine them into two sentences, like the just as and so too. Kind of allows you to put it into one sentence, making actually combined. Superhero comic books are periodically reworked to try to increase their appeal to contemporary readers, while popular film franchises are often rebooted. I don't think it was trying to contrast the two in the original. It was trying to say they're similar. Like, that's why A threw in the words they are similar, right? So I think C is, again, it's making a change that's not justified. Superhero comic books are much like... Did it say much like? I think D is taking too many liberties, but I'll check the rest. To make the characters and stories fresh and relevant for new audience, and periodically reworked to try to increase their appeal to contemporary readers. No, because now they changed it. The popular film franchises were the ones that were trying to get their characters fresh and stuff. Yeah, and then D is just making the subject of both of those superhero comics, so changing the structure of the sentence, I think, without justification. I'm going to go with B. This practice is almost as elderly as the medium itself and is large artist. Okay, it's almost as old, right? Like it's been around for a long time. That composed the comic book history. The shift from the golden to silver age is probably the most successful example of publishers. We don't want to pause like that. So example of publishers responding. No pauses required whatsoever. So D. Which is most consistent previous example. I gotta read the paragraph. Okay. The start of the first golden age of comic books is often dated to 1938 with the debut of Superman in Action Comics #1. Besides beginning the age, Superman in many respects defined it, becoming the model on which many later superheroes were based. His characterization as established in Superman #1, 1939, was relatively simple. He could hurdle skyscrapers and leap an eighth of a mile, run faster than a streamlined train without anything less than withstand anything less than a bursting shell, and lift a car over his head. Previous examples? Hold down a regular train. Okay, so all the previous examples were him being superhuman, so I don't think B is... I don't know, it depends on which newspaper you work for, but I don't think that that's necessarily superhuman. Where bright, same thing with C. Live in a big city with... Okay, so it's A, because people typically can't lift cars over their heads. Sent to Earth from the doomed planet. I don't think I need to read this. I'm just going to go... Okay, let's go. Onwards. 38. Which choice most effectively sets up the main idea of the following two sentences? Obviously, if you're doing the real test, I would strongly recommend reading everything. I know some students don't like to, and obviously I'm setting the example that you don't need to, but it's just to be safe. I found that the students who tend to score super high are the ones who have like this abundance of caution, and occasionally you can find like useful little tidbits of information throughout the passage that'll help with like the overall kind of main idea ones too. By contrast, the second Silver Age of comics was marked by characters that, though somewhat simplistic by today's standards, were provided with origin stories. Okay, something. In addition to supervillains, the new, soon-to-be iconic characters of the age, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Hulk among them. I think this is probably a parentheses, right? Isn't Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Hulk among them a parenthetical? So start with dash, end with dash. You can test it by deleting it. So in addition to the new, soon-to-be iconic characters of the age had to cope with mundane real-life perfect. Yeah, so it's D. Including paying the rent, dealing with family squabbles, and facing anger, loneliness, and ostracism. Their interior lives were richer, and their motivations more complex. Although sales remained strong for Golden Age stalwart Superman, and to a lesser extent Batman, blank. Okay, which choice most effectively sets up the main idea of the following two sentences? Where they were like more realistic? So not A, that's a bit random, reflected increasing random, engaged in bizarre random, or more real, it's D. Writer wants a conclusion to the sentence and paragraph that logically completes the discussion of the Silver Age and provides an effective transition to the next paragraph. Which choice best accomplishes this goal? Interesting that this is asking so specifically to complete the discussion of the Silver Age. I think they're going to kind of hope that I focus on the transition portion of it and overlook that they're like, oh, it has to complete it, so maybe that'll help. Subsequent things would show the enduring appeal of these characters. Distinction between later stages of comic book history are less well defined. I need to read the next paragraph, I think, to know. More transformations would take place in the medium as the Silver Age gave way to the Bronze and modern, possibly postmodern ages. Such efforts have yielded diminishing returns. I think that is A. It's the same tense as the next sentence, right? It has failed. I think it's A. As even the complete relaunch of DC Comics superhero line has failed to arrest the steep two-decade decline in comic book sales. As even the complete DC Comics superhero line. I think superhero line is like one, it shouldn't be possessive. So it's like, I think it's like a compound noun. So superhero line, and then the superhero line of DC Comics. Would be D, I think. Has failed to arrest the steep two-decade decline of comic book sales for both commercial and arguably creative reasons. Then no transition. Interesting. So 43, B, C, and D are all contrast transitions. So they would all be sort of like identical here. So it has to be, they would all indicate a shift in tone as well. So I think it has to be A. No transition was more successful than blank from the golden and silver. This is a logical comparison again. So we're comparing like no transition was more successful than the transition from the golden to silver age. We'd need a placeholder word for transition. So it would be C, given that that's the only singular one. No transition was more successful than the transition from the golden to silver. Yeah. Okay, I think I skipped the last. Okay, so 40 would be the last one, given that I had to read like 2 paragraphs for it. So let's see. Subsequently, show the enduring appeal of these characters. I don't know if they talked about that. Completely. Such efforts have yielded. Yeah, like it kind of turned bad in the next paragraphs. I'm not sure that I think wouldn't follow the second part of the directions where they're transitioning. The distinction in the later stages of the comic book's history are less well defined than the one. Okay, the history part, I don't think so, because like if we're talking about the postmodern stuff, like we know what happened there. It's not saying that we can't tell. Readers increasingly gravitate to the upstarts as the 1960s and the Silver Age drew to a close. The characters themselves underwent significant changes over the course of the Silver Age. Interesting. I think that the only one that actually completes the discussion, like it literally says like, oh, like Silver Age is done, is C. And I think that like if you focus too much on the effective transition part, then maybe someone would pick something like A, but A not only is like doesn't complete the discussion, but it also like kind of clashes with what the next paragraph says too. So it wouldn't even be an effective transition. So I feel like you kind of have to pick the least bad one here. I would go with C. Hopefully we're right. Next, section 3 coming up.